Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Game On.
Yes, today we are bringing you the first episode of our new series called Homebrew Homeschool.
As you might be able to gather from the title, this one is about how to write a homebrew adventure that is easy to run, enjoyable for your players, paced and thought out, and ultimately successful for everybody involved. So we're going to give you some pointers on how to help do that and approach things in this first episode in a couple of different ways.
Yes, so the best way to get started is to actually start thinking about our story.
Now, Justin and I come at this from kind of two different directions, which is probably not too hard for you guys to believe because we are often approaching things from different directions, but that makes a good video in the sense of it really kind of brackets how you can go about this. The first method that Justin will talk about, his preferred method, is one that I jokingly like to call the Jenga Method. So he'll go over how he goes about it.
So yes, we like to colloquially call it the Jenga Method because what I like to do is I am very much a storyteller. I like to write a story. I'm actually pretty good at just writing down a story and just doing it willy-nilly. But how do you turn that into a game? You know, you can't just take a story and then just make it into a game. You have to do it different ways. And the way that I like to do it is what we call, again, the Jenga Method, where we take set pieces from the actual story itself, pull it out, and give that free space is where the players are going to be making their choices. It's a really good way to help new players learn to play a game or new to the system as well. So if you were, I guess, like I said, new to the system, you could use that to help teach somebody how they could interact with the world and they're not just playing through the DM story.
Well, sure, because I mean, what you're really talking about is starting with a solid structure that is 100% predetermined, and then pulling certain elements of predetermination out of that story and replacing them with role-playing options for players, right?
Exactly.
But ultimately, you can keep as much of that structure as you want to maintain the game.
Yep.
And pull pieces out as much or as little as you want to.
Yeah.
And that extra structure will definitely help with newbies.
Yeah, it's great for keeping people on pace and on track. Like if you were at a convention or you were playing an Adventurers League game where you had to do things in a certain amount of time, it's great for getting people step by step by step.
Well, sure, and that's exactly how adventures for those types of environments are usually written, right?
Yes.
Somebody like lays it out how long this is gonna take, what has to happen.
Yep.
And then they start thinking, all right, well, how much flexibility do I want to give the players? And I'll start pulling pieces out to let them sort of make decisions and so forth.
It's a great way to flesh out the story if you have an ending in mind as well. But the downside is that if you don't hit that first stop or that first little Jenga hole that's missing, but you get to the second one, the whole thing can topple over.
Well, right. I mean, look, if you're going to have a set story arc that's written, and you pull out pieces, you kind of have to do them in order.
Yeah.
In order for that story arc to still function the same way, so it can have a feeling of less options or less flexibility for players.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the more experienced players are going to find that they have less player agency in this. Their interactions with the world won't be as impactful.
Yeah, but on the upside, it's much easier to maintain pace and momentum with a setup like this, and you can help players who are, suffer from well, your phrase, analysis paralysis, right?
Yep.
Like they get stuck on a decision and they don't know what to do. Well, your story arc can kind of carry them over a bump like that and keep the story moving, whereas a different type of environment, everything might come to a screeching halt, and it's harder to get people sort of restarted.
Exactly, and actually, the other way that you can write these stories, which is probably better for the more advanced player, is what we like to call the Lego method.
Okay, so the Lego method, right? If your favorite method is the Jenga method, my favorite method is the Lego method. And it really approaches it from the exact opposite direction, where I like to start with the role-playing scenes and encounters as individual pieces in this construction, and then I build bridges between those scenes to sort of create the narrative arc. The reason that I like to approach it this way, and again, it's not all one or the other, right? We've both used the opposite methods at times, but this is my favorite because it emphasizes role playing. It emphasizes those player-determined encounters, which makes them a higher priority in the game. It gives the players a feeling of more agency, more power, more ability for their choices to predetermine how the story goes.
Yeah.
It also, because each of those encounters, while interconnected, are also kind of individual pieces, oftentimes they can be done in different order without interrupting the flow of the story. So I think that that's important because, again, it gives the players the choice to decide what they want to do in the order that they want to do it. It empowers players.
Yeah.
And that oftentimes, especially with more experienced players, means a higher level of engagement and entertainment. It's a more fulfilling gaming experience for somebody who's up to the task. But, I mean, the flip side of that is it asks more of the players.
Yeah, and one of the things about the Jenga method is we kind of touched on it, and that's good for one-shots, but this is definitely not a one-shot kind of campaign.
Yeah, I would say that it tends to favor longer story arcs, or at least more multifaceted story arcs. And it also favors more of an open sandbox gaming world where you can just go and approach different elements in a campaign or different encounters or different sort of chapters in an overarching story. It can be done as a one-shot, but it's not the preferred method, I guess is how I would say it. But, because it gives the players so much power to determine their own fate in a story, it also asks a lot more of them.
Yes.
And they are now much more in charge of maintaining the momentum and the pace of the game because they have so many choices. They have to make some.
Yeah.
And so if they don't, if they get stuck on a choice or they don't know what to do or there's too many choices to choose from and they don't know which direction to go in, that in turn asks more of the GM, right? Because the GM has got to be able to restart that flow
Definitely.
seamlessly as possible. And because the players have so much more choice in the matter, they're going to throw the GM more curveballs.
Yep.
Like, you're going to have to be able to ad lib. You're not going to be able to rely on as many pre-written set pieces, box text descriptions, things like that. And because the players are likely to approach these things in a different order than you anticipate, you may not want to rely on settings as much for encounters. Like, you don't geolocate, you don't set it in a specific place, right? You want to build your encounters around people, not places. Because people are mobile, places are not.
Yeah.
And so, and because of that, you're going to have to be able to, ad lib. You're going to have to be able to make it up on the fly and be comfortable with that. And that can be very rewarding and fun for
Definitely.
a GM, but it's also work. So you've got to be up to it.
Yeah.
But if the players are willing to do their part and the GM is willing to do their part, I think it's a more sophisticated gaming experience. But if you have novice players, that's going to be diving in at the deep end of the pool.
Yep.
So that's something to keep in mind of if you're trying to choose which method to construct your story from. And like I said, we've both used the other at times. And sometimes you can do a hybrid where you make certain elements of the story written your way and certain other elements written this way. And it can work out either way.
I agree.
So there you have it. Those are the two methods that we prefer for writing homebrew adventures. Be sure and let us know in the comments below what your preferences are, whether it's one of these two or maybe something we didn't even talk about this time in the video.
And don't forget that this is the first episode of a new series from us called Homebrew Homeschool. And if you guys have any interest in letting us know also what you would like to see in topics for this, for older GMs or newer ones, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay safe, everybody. Stay warm, and game on.